Donald Trump's ratings have catastrophically plummeted amid the war with Iran, and suddenly, against this backdrop, there is a report that the US will still be withdrawing American troops from Middle Eastern countries. That's exactly why the Saudis rushed to sign a military pact with Pakistan and Turkey. A Reuters Ipsos poll found that Donald Trump's approval rating fell to its lowest point during his entire second presidency.
As of today, only 33% of Americans are satisfied with his work, while 64% are dissatisfied.
At the same time, the overwhelming majority of those surveyed fear that the war with Iran will drag on for a very, very long time. And on the same day, it turned out that the Pentagon is seriously discussing reducing and relocating its military presence in the Persian Gulf, effectively retreating further from Iran after. The war exposed the vulnerability of American bases in this region. But don't forget, this is exactly what Iran is actually demanding to end the war. Let's break down both stories together, because they're much more closely connected than they might seem at first glance. My name is Alexei Pieci. Let's discuss these topics, but before we start, please subscribe to this channel, like this episode and leave a comment below this video afterward. We can have a discussion there if you happen to disagree with anything mentioned in this episode. So, let's start with the numbers from a recent opinion poll in the United States of America. According to a 4-day Reuters Ipsos poll, a third of Americans, 33%, are still satisfied with the actions of Donald Trump,
while 64% expressed disapproval.
In an earlier poll from the same month, the share of those approving was 35%, so the decline continues week after week. The current level of trust has matched the historic low recorded during Donald's first presidential term back in December 2017. The spike in gasoline prices triggered by the war with Iran is hitting American households and directly undermining the electoral prospects of the Republican Party in the upcoming November congressional elections. And this is where a huge problem has emerged for the Republicans as a whole. Because Donald Trump has led things to the point where, for the first time in decades, according to another poll by the same Reuters Ipsos from early August, Americans consider the Democrats more competent at managing the economy than the Republicans.
Although for the last 10 years it was the opposite, since the Democrats still have a more social inclination, while the Republicans are pure capitalists.
And Americans thought that it was better for the Republicans to handle the economy. But now, for the first time in 10 years, Americans are saying that the Republicans have managed things so badly that it's better to let the Democrats do it. But the point is that Trump's ratings are steadily falling, and now we'll track the trend. On July 17, a CNBC poll gave Trump 40% approval versus 59% disapproval. And these were his worst numbers on the economy in his entire political career. So specifically on the economy, 40% approved, 59% disapproved. On July 23rd, an Emerson College poll showed 39% versus 57%. And the Democrats gained an 11-point lead on the generic congressional ballot. On July 30th, two polls recorded record lows. In particular, analyst Nate Silver's tracker showed a net approval of almost minus 21%. This is a record for a second term. At the same time, the AP NORC poll gave Trump only 33%.
From August 7 to 10, a Financial Times poll showed 35% versus 55%.
And the Democrats were ahead by 6 points, with 20% undecided. Moreover, 42% of voters who identified as Democrats said they would vote against Trump, and only 22% would vote for him. By August 13, a separate poll recorded an 8-point lead for the Democrats in the overall rating, with the same 33% approval of Trump's performance. And as of today,
Already by August 19, this 33% approval rating for Trump has settled in as a new constant.
The numbers. And by the way, this is also Donald Trump's own reaction to all these statistics. In June, he wrote in his social network Truth Social in all capital letters, really big, that his actual public support has in fact reached a historic high, not a low. And at the beginning of August, he repeated, quote, "My real ratings, not the ones made up by the lying media, are the best ever." So basically, he publicly denies the very trend that is being independently recorded by several different polling agencies. And now the second part of this topic, which in fact could bring Trump's ratings down even further. According to the Washington Post, the US is considering significantly changing its military presence in the Persian Gulf after a number of facilities were damaged during the war with Iran. The Pentagon and the US Army Central Command are studying several options for further deployment of military forces in the region. In particular, there is discussion about not restoring some of the damaged bases to the same state they were in before hostilities began at the end of February. This has not yet become an official order from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, but Pentagon officials admit that yes, some decisions will have to be made on these issues. And in some places, military bases will be closed, some will be restructured, and some troops will be withdrawn from the region altogether. And here is one of the scenarios being discussed: to move some of the American troops and bases further west of Iran to an area that includes Jordan and Israel. The logic is as follows. The war has demonstrated the vulnerability of American forces in the region, and moving them further away from a significant part of Iran's missile range could reduce the risks. Although, as you can imagine, there is no perfect solution to this problem because Iran's ballistic missiles have also hit Jordan and Israel. Well, here I show you the scale of what's really at stake. Usually, about 40,000 American servicemen are stationed at around 20 military bases throughout the Middle East, and the largest facilities in the Persian Gulf countries include the headquarters of the US Navy's 5th Fleet in Bahrain. And during the war, Washington sharply increased its presence by deploying dozens of warships and aircraft carriers in the region with thousands of sailors. Some of the servicemen have already been there for hundreds of days longer than originally planned. And in the end, most of these troops have been there for quite a long time already. But now they can all be withdrawn from the Persian Gulf region because Trump simply couldn't handle the war. I don't know, you really have to be Donald Trump for that to say that everything is completely different. The consequences of Trump's possible withdrawal are not straightforward for the entire region. Because on the one hand, Washington gets the opportunity to restructure the deployment of forces, taking into account the real risks that this war has revealed. Well, I mean, okay, the bases were set up a long time ago and maybe the risks were different. For example, Iran didn't have such missiles before, now they do, and maybe it's even reasonable to move these bases a bit. But on the other hand, such a step will almost certainly be perceived by Iran itself as a significant achievement. Tehran has long been demanding the withdrawal of American troops from the region, and now suddenly the Americans go ahead and withdraw them. The reduction or relocation of bases may also make the Gulf countries themselves, which host American facilities, more vulnerable. In other words, the US withdrawal could leave its allies to face potential new attacks from Iran on their own. This issue is already intensifying internal discussions within the Trump administration. There is a struggle for influence over the president. It's between supporters of a tougher policy and the isolationist wing who say, let's withdraw our bases from around the world, close ourselves off in America, and make America great again. America first, and so on. The current stalemate around the Hormuz Strait is also telling, which persists amid all these discussions. Iran states that it will not open the strait until the US fully complies with the terms of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding. At the same time, Trump himself continues to publicly voice the idea of declaring the Hormuz Strait as the territory of the United States, that is, in theory, insisting on control over the strait. Even while military planners are discussing a physical withdrawal away from the range of Iranian missiles. In conclusion, Trump's approval rating is dropping largely because of the same war with Iran, rising gas prices and public fear that the war will drag on, which is confirmed by several independent polls throughout the summer. We have observed this trend together. Meanwhile, the military leadership is simultaneously discussing a withdrawal from forward positions in the Persian Gulf, acknowledging that the war has exposed the real vulnerability of American forces in the region. It turns out to be a double retreat. Political, measured in percentage points ahead of the November congressional elections, and physical, measured by how many kilometers the base is moved away from Iranian missiles. And as you can imagine, both of these retreats are rooted in the same unfinished, unpopular war, which Trump himself still considers to be very, very popular. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye everyone. To be continued.